Welcome back, homies. We're at it again. Day number 44 on the Daily Dose. Thank you guys for being here, and thank you so much for joining me. If you are new, you can find a link down below to the PDF, which has got all of the instructions for each day of the scripture that we're reading. We are going through the entire Bible over the course of a year, and right now we are on day number 44 of that. So if you are new, I appreciate you joining us. Please continue along, follow us every single day. Being in the Word every day is so important. So important. It's a great way for us to learn. It's a great way for us to fellowship down in the comment section, talk back and forth with each other if you've got concerns or questions. And it's a great way for us to honor the Lord by being in His Word. So let's jump right into it. So we've got Numbers chapter 14 through 16 today. We've also got Psalm, and we're looking at 44 in Psalm 44. So we will jump right into the summary today. There's a good amount of things that happen. We've got some good talking points. So basically today, we read about the people rebelling again. You're like, didn't that just happen? Yeah, it did just happen. And then right before that, it just happened. And then before that, it just happened. It's a recurring pattern. A recurring pattern. So now the people are saying, hey, look, if only we had died in Egypt. They keep going back to this thing about Egypt. They keep looking back to Egypt. They keep saying, why did God bring us out here if we're just going to die? We don't have water, we don't have food, even though God ended up miraculously supplying those things for them on multiple occasions. They're still looking back to Egypt, right? Do you ever look back to your sinful life? Not that you're not a sinner anymore, those of you who are believers, but you know what I mean. For those of you who put your faith in Jesus Christ, you have a pre-Christ life, and then you have your current born-again life. Do you ever look back to your life pre-Christ and reminisce about some of those things? About the inappropriate, illicit sexual relationships that you may have been in, and now that you're a Christian, you're not involved in that anymore? Do you ever look back and miss that? I hope not. You shouldn't. Do you ever look back at all of the drunken nights that you would spend partying and then waking up hungover the next morning, not knowing how you got where you woke up? Do you ever look back at the past and just kind of romanticize it and think about how you think that you miss it when in reality, the grass isn't always greener on the other side? So anyways, the people are saying, if only we had died in Egypt. They basically try to impeach Moses, right? They pretty much try to impeach him. They're like, this guy Moses, he's leading us. Our needs aren't being met. He doesn't know what he's doing. We're sick of it. He never should have even brought us out here, so on and so forth. So they're trying to, they start talking about like, hey, maybe we need to stone Moses, Maybe he is not telling us all of the truth that God's telling him. Maybe he's making some of this up, whatever. The people are just starting to get up in arms and they're rebelling, talking about stoning Moses, the person who is their representative to God, right? If we jump into the New Testament, the Pharisees and the majority of the Jews, when Jesus came, Jesus was preaching good news, great news. He was preaching that he was the fulfillment of Old Testament prophecy, that he was the Messiah. And what did the people want to do? They wanted to stone him. So Moses is kind of a type of Christ in a way. There's a lot of similarities between the two. So God gets furious, and we hear God voicing that he's contemplating killing all of these complaining Israelites and just starting back over with Moses again from square one. So Moses intervenes. Moses prays to God on behalf of the people, which he seems to continually do, and God ends up granting mercy and says, okay, well, I'm not going to kill them all and wipe everybody out. But because of all of this complaining and grumbling, what God says is that this generation, meaning all of the people who are like the prime generation at that point, this generation of people will not enter the promised land, right? So God promised the promised land to the nation of Israel. But what he's saying is that all of these people that are, probably in their 20s and 30s and 40s and 50s, this current generation, they're not going to be permitted to enter. Their children and their children's children and so on will be permitted to enter. So God basically says that for 40 years, you're going to be wandering around in the wilderness until this generation dies off. Once this generation dies off, then I will permit the generation that's upcoming to be entering into the land. So, and if you think about it, it's 40 years. Again, the number 40. How many days were the spies, the scouts, out exploring the land and surveying the land and checking out, their potential enemies? 40 days. So God gives them 1 year in the wilderness for each day that the scouts were out doing their scouting and spying. So again, just another interesting little use of the number 40 here. So the 10 unbelieving spies died from the plague. They end up getting some sickness, some plague, and those 10 unbelieving spies bite the dust. They die. When they do, again, the people see the judgment of God and his discipline and his justice, and the people have a change of heart. Again, right? Shocking. So at this point, they go to attack some of the nearby enemies. They're like, okay, well, at first we doubted, we didn't believe God, we trusted these 10 scouts that said we couldn't do it, but we've seen the power of God. We don't want to die from the plague. Let's go take these people. God said we can do it. Let's go do it. So they go to attack their nearby enemies. However, God had not told them to do that, at least not told them to do that yet. So now they went from one extreme to the other. They went from disobeying God, disbelieving God, by thinking that they were going to get, whooped up on by all of these surrounding, cities and towns and tribes. So now they're like, oh, God was serious. Okay, well, now let's go do what we need to do and we'll go fight. But God wasn't ready for them to do that just yet. So they end up getting whooped because they jumped the gun and had a knee-jerk reaction, right? They had a knee-jerk reaction. So after they get their heinies handed to them, we look at a few other things. The scripture goes on to talk about some supplementary offerings for unintentional sin. It talks about how anyone who breaks the Sabbath is to be put to death. And it also talks about tassels on garments. And there's also kind of a small insurrection that crops up again. There's a little bit of jealousy of Moses that's involved here. Some people are getting jealous. Again, people are questioning his leadership. The leaders of this insurrection, it's not just like one guy, but it's not like all of the Israelites. There's this group of kind of insurrectionists that are just getting sick of Moses and all of the stuff that's going on, and they are wanting to kind of the impeachment type thing, like what we were talking about the other day. Same type of situation, just a little bit different. So now what's interesting is that the leaders of this insurrection, the ground opens up and swallows them down into this massive pit, and then the ground seals back up. And that's God's way, I guess, of exacting judgment on them. And again, his way of saying, look, y'all have it wrong. Moses is the one that I've chosen. You need to listen to him. Stop trying to overrule him and go against the grain. So the next day, after all those people get swallowed up in the ground, the next day, the people as a whole begin to grumble again. Really? Yeah, really. So Moses intervenes again. Okay, so now there's a plague that starts. God allows a plague to come among the people at this point. And we read that that this plague kills 14,700 people, right? And the plague ultimately stops after Aaron talks to God and does some things on behalf of the people. But you guys notice this. We've just got this ongoing pattern of grumbling and rebellion, and then God rebuking them and God punishing or disciplining them. It just kind of seems to go on and on. So that's pretty much where we stop for today. And that's about all the time that we've got, you guys. So I want to thank you guys for joining me as per usual. And we'll be right back at it again tomorrow. So thanks for being here. And until we meet again, deuces.